The resume landed on my desk like a grenade with its pin pulled. I hadn't seen that name in 15 years, but there it was in clean, precise typography. Alina Gibson. My hands trembled as I read it again, making sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. My name is Nora, and I run one of New York's fastest growing fashion brands. But 15 years ago, I was just a starry-eyed design student with big dreams and an even bigger portfolio. That was before Alina, my stepmother, destroyed everything I'd worked for. Nora, the buyers from Nordstrom are here. Anton knocked on my office door, his familiar voice pulling me back to reality. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I held up the resume. Something like that. Anton stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He'd been my business partner for 8 years, and he knew every scar in my history. Is that the woman who stole my designs, sent them to her friend at Vogue, and got me blacklisted from every major fashion house in New York? Yeah, that's her. Holy shit. He sank into the chair across from my desk. What's she applying for? Junior pattern maker, I laughed, but it came out hollow. Can you believe it? The woman who once called me a talentless hack wants to work for me. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen. Lunch? That new Thai place? Go, Anton said, reading my expression. I'll handle the Nordstrom meeting. You need to process this. 30 minutes later, I was picking at Pad Thai while Karen read the resume. My best friend since college, she'd been there through the aftermath of Alina's betrayal. So what are you going to do? Karen asked, setting down the paper. Part of me wants to throw it in the trash. Another part wants to hire her, just to fire her on her first day. And the rational part? I stabbed a shrimp with my fork. The rational part knows she's qualified. More than qualified, actually. Before she married my dad, she worked for some of the biggest names in Paris. Your dad, Karen said carefully. Does he know she's back in New York? I haven't spoken to him in months. Not since. I trailed off, remembering our last argument. He'd never believed me about Alina, even when the evidence was right in front of him. My phone lit up with a text from my half-sister, Caitlin. Mom's applying for jobs again. Keep an eye out? Shit, I muttered, showing Karen the message. Caitlin doesn't know she applied to my company. Maybe this is your chance, Karen said, leaning forward, to finally get the truth out. Or maybe it's karma giving me exactly what I asked for all those years ago, a chance at revenge. Is that really what you want? Before I could answer, Anton called. The Nordstrom buyers loved the new collection, he said, but we need more hands in production to meet their order deadline. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Send me the top 5 resumes for the pattern maker position, including? Yes, I said, surprising myself, including hers. Back at the office, I spread the resumes across my desk. 4 belonged to fresh graduates with minimal experience. The 5th was Alina's, with its impressive list of credentials and experience that could help us meet our deadlines. Miles, my mentor and the man who'd given me a second chance when no one else would, always said success was the best revenge. I'd built this company from nothing, proving Alina wrong about everything she'd ever said about me. But as I picked up her resume again, I remembered the last time I'd seen her. It was at my father's birthday party 5 years ago. She'd looked right through me like I was invisible, her arm linked with my father's as she laughed at some joke I couldn't hear. The interview slots are open for tomorrow, Anton said from the doorway. Should I schedule her? I thought about karma, about justice, about the scared 23-year-old girl I'd been when Alina destroyed my dreams. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, stronger, successful, and supposedly above petty revenge. Schedule it, I said, making my decision. But don't tell her who she's interviewing with. Let's see if she recognizes me after all these years. Anton nodded, a hint of concern in his eyes. Are you sure about this? I wasn't. But as I looked around my office, at the magazine covers featuring my designs and the awards lining my walls, I realized something. Maybe this wasn't about revenge at all. Maybe it was about finally facing the demons that had been chasing me for 15 years. Schedule it for 9 a.m., I said, picking up my phone to text Caitlin. And Anton, make sure you're free tomorrow morning. I might need backup. As I typed out a casual response to my sister, my hands were steady. Tomorrow, I would come face to face with the woman who'd tried to destroy my future. And this time, I held all the cards. I barely slept that night. At 3 a.m., I found myself sitting on my apartment balcony, nursing a glass of wine and scrolling through old photos on my phone. There was one from my graduation, before everything fell apart. Dad stood proud beside me, and Alina, well, she was already plotting. My phone buzzed. Karen, also awake. Can't sleep either, I texted. Just checking on you. Don't do anything I wouldn't do tomorrow. That leaves a lot of options open, I replied, managing a smile. The sun was barely up when I arrived at the office. Anton was already there, 2 coffee cups in hand. You look like hell, he said, handing me one. Thanks, that's exactly what I want to hear before facing my evil stepmother. It's not too late to cancel, he offered, following me into my office. I shook my head. She's due in 30 minutes. I need you to greet her in reception, bring her up, act like this is a normal interview. And then what? You realize this could backfire spectacularly, right? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Dad. Honey? His voice was tentative. Caitlin mentioned Alina's looking for work in the fashion industry again. I wanted to make sure you're okay. My throat tightened. Now you're worried about me? Where was this concern 15 years ago? Nora, please. I know you and Alina had your differences. Differences? I cut him off. She stole my designs, Dad. She destroyed my reputation before I even had one. Those weren't differences. That was sabotage. Maybe it's time to let go of the past, he said softly. People change. Yeah, well, we're about to find out. I hung up before he could respond. Anton raised an eyebrow. Your dad knows? Caitlin told him. Speaking of, I pulled up my sister's contact. I should warn her. Hey, sis, Caitlin answered on the second ring. Everything okay? Mom applied to work at my company. Silence. Then, oh God, please tell me you're not going to interview her? She'll be here in 20 minutes. Nora, this is a bad idea. She's not doing well. After Dad's company took that hit last year, they had to downsize everything. She's been struggling to find work. Karma's a bitch, I muttered. She's still my mother, Caitlin said quietly. And your family, whether you like it or not. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Gibson is here for her interview, my assistant announced. Showtime, Anton said, heading for the door. Last chance to back out. I straightened my designer blazer, one of my own designs, featured in last month's Vogue. Bring her up. 5 minutes later, Anton knocked. Ms. Gibson, please come in. The woman who walked into my office was not the Alina I remembered. Gone was the perfectly coiffed hair, the designer clothes, the air of superiority. This Alina looked tired, worn. Her once immaculate blonde hair had visible grays, and her clothes, while professional, were clearly off the rack. She didn't recognize me at first, too nervous as she took the seat across from my desk. Then our eyes met. The color drained from her face. Nora? Hello, Alina. My voice was steady, professional. Thank you for coming in today. She gripped her portfolio tight enough to turn her knuckles white. I didn't know. The posting just said creative director. Would you have applied if you'd known it was my company? Her eyes darted to the door where Anton stood blocking the exit. I should go. Why? You're qualified for the position? Extremely qualified, actually. I opened her resume. Though I noticed you left off that incident at Vogue 15 years ago, the one where you passed off stolen designs as your own. Nora, please. Her voice cracked. I need this job. Like I needed your support? Like I needed my father to believe me instead of you? Tears welled in her eyes. I was wrong. What I did, I can't take it back. But I'm begging you, please don't humiliate me. I have nothing left. Anton cleared his throat. I'll give you two a minute. Once he left, Alina seemed to collapse in on herself. Your father's business. We lost everything. The house, the cars, our savings. I've been trying to get back into fashion for months, but no one will hire me. Why should I? She looked up, meeting my eyes. Because you're better than me? Because you built something amazing from nothing, even after what I did. Because, she swallowed hard, because I'm sorry. I stood up, walking to the window. The city sprawled below, full of people fighting their own battles. The position starts Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. What? She sounded stunned. You're hired, Alina, but understand this. One mistake, one hint of betrayal, and you're done. Not just here, but everywhere. I have that power now. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. I won't let you down. As she hurried out, I texted Karen. I just hired her. The response came immediately. Either you're crazy or you're brilliant. Maybe both. Maybe I was. But as I watched Alina's retreating figure through my office windows, I couldn't help wondering if I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Monday morning arrived with a tension so thick you could cut it with fabric shears. I watched from my office as Alina was shown to her workstation in the pattern-making department. She wore the same outfit from the interview, another reminder of how far she'd fallen from her designer-clad days. The team's wondering why you hired someone so overqualified, Anton said, appearing at my door with our morning coffee ritual. Sarah in HR thinks she's a corporate spy. I almost laughed. If they only knew. Speaking of knowing, he nodded toward the elevator, where Caitlin was stepping out, looking professional in one of my designs. As our marketing coordinator, she usually worked from our downtown office. Does Mom know I work here? She asked without preamble, closing my office door. No, I thought I'd leave that surprise for you. Caitlin sank into a chair. This is cruel, Nora, even for you. Cruel? I set down my coffee. Like stealing someone's designs and destroying their career before it began? She's changed, Caitlin insisted. After Dad's company crashed, she hit rock bottom. She had to sell her jewelry just to make rent. Before I could respond, my assistant buzzed. The pattern for the Nordstrom collection needs your approval. Send it in, I said, grateful for the interruption. The door opened and there was Alina clutching the patterns. Our eyes met, and for a moment, nobody moved. Mom? Caitlin's voice was small. Alina's hands started shaking. Katie, you work here? Surprise, I said dryly. Family reunion. Alina steadied herself against the wall. I should have known. You two were always close, even after you tried to ruin my life. I stood up. Let's see those patterns. She handed them over, and I had to admit, her work was impeccable. The modifications she'd made to my original designs would save us both time and fabric without compromising the aesthetic. These are good, I said reluctantly. I learned from the best, she whispered. Your father. He always said you got your talent from your mother. The mention of my mom, who died when I was 12, leaving Dad vulnerable to Alina's charms, hit me like a slap. Don't, I warned. Don't talk about her. Nora, Caitlin started, but I cut her off. The patterns are approved. You can go. Alina turned to leave, then stopped. I saw your collection in Vogue last month, the blue evening gown. It reminded me of the sketch you showed me that night, the one I stole, I finished. Yeah, well, I redesigned it, made it better. You did, she admitted. You made everything better. After she left, Caitlin stayed, watching me with those careful eyes she'd inherited from her mother. She cries herself to sleep sometimes, thinking about what she did to you. Good. Is it? Is any of this making you feel better? Before I could answer, Anton burst in. Emergency on the production floor. The silk supplier sent the wrong shade for the Nordstrom order. I followed him down, Caitlin trailing behind. The production team was gathered around boxes of fabric, all in a pale pink instead of the deep rose we'd ordered. We can't use this, my production manager said. The whole collection is built around that rose color. The supplier can't get us the right shade for 3 weeks, Anton added. We'll miss our deadline. We could overdye it. Alina's voice came from behind me. I did it in Paris when we had a similar issue. If we use natural dyes and control the temperature precisely, I turned to face her. You've done this before? Many times. I can show your team how. I looked at the fabric, then at our looming deadline. Do it. But if you ruin this silk, I won't, she said firmly. Trust me. Those 2 words hung in the air between us, heavy with history. For the next hour, I watched as Alina directed the team with quiet confidence. Her hands moved surely as she mixed the dyes, tested temperatures, demonstrated the technique. This was the woman who'd once commanded respect in Paris ateliers before she'd chosen manipulation over merit. She's good, Anton murmured beside me. She always was, I admitted. That's what made her betrayal worse. By late afternoon, the first batch of silk emerged from the dye bath, a perfect match to our original color. Well done, I told the team, deliberately not meeting Alina's eyes. But as I turned to leave, she spoke. I did it for the money, she said quietly, stealing your designs. Your father's company was struggling, and my friend at Vogue offered. Stop, I faced her. You did it because you were jealous, because Dad bragged about my talent more than yours, because you couldn't stand that a 23-year-old might succeed where you'd failed. Tears filled her eyes. You're right, and I've regretted it every day since. Save your regrets, I said, walking away. Just don't screw up again. But as I headed back to my office, I couldn't shake the image of her competent hands working the dye, saving our collection. It was harder to hate someone when you saw them doing what they loved, what they were meant to do before bitterness poisoned everything. I texted Karen. She saved our Nordstrom order today. Maybe she's trying to save something else, too, came the reply. You're staring at those sales reports like they hold the secrets of the universe, Anton said, dropping into the chair across from my desk. 2 weeks had passed since the silk dyeing incident, and Alina had been frustratingly competent. Just thinking, I replied, closing my laptop. Remember when we started, working out of your garage? Back when you were still banned from every major fashion house in New York? He smiled. Look at us now. No thanks to. I stopped as Caitlin appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but Mom's asking for you. There's an issue with the new collection's sleeves. I found Alina in the pattern room, surrounded by muslin prototypes. She looked up as I entered, dark circles under her eyes suggesting late nights at work. The sleeve construction you designed, she said, holding up a sample. It's innovative, but the current pattern wastes almost 30% of the fabric. That's the price of innovation. Not necessarily. She grabbed a pencil, quickly sketching on pattern paper. If we rotate the piece like this, we save fabric without compromising the design. I studied her modification. It was brilliant, actually. Something I should have seen myself. Why are you doing this? I asked suddenly. She set down her pencil. Doing what? Being helpful, being good at your job. It would be easier if you were terrible. Easier to fire me, you mean? She smiled sadly. I'm doing it because it's what I love, what I used to love, before I let jealousy poison everything. Tell me why, I demanded, closing the door. I want to hear it from you. Why did you do it? Alina sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 60 years. Your father was so proud of you. Every dinner, every party, it was Nora this and Nora that. My own career was fading, and there you were, this brilliant young star about to eclipse everything I'd achieved. So you destroyed me. My friend at Vogue offered me a chance to submit designs for their emerging designer feature. I'd been rejected 3 times before. When I saw your sketches, she wiped her eyes. I convinced myself you were young, you'd recover. I never imagined the consequences would be so severe. I lost everything, I said quietly. My reputation, my dreams, my relationship with Dad. I know, and then, years later, when your first independent collection launched, she gestured around the room. You proved you didn't need any of us. You built this empire from nothing. A knock interrupted us. It was Miles, my mentor, making his monthly visit. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said, then stopped short at the sight of Alina. Well, this is unexpected. Miles, Alina whispered, I didn't know you consulted here. You two know each other? I asked. Alina was quite famous in Paris when I was starting out, Miles said carefully, until that unfortunate plagiarism scandal. The color drained from Alina's face. That was different. I was young, desperate. Wait, I cut in. What plagiarism scandal? Miles looked between us. You didn't know? Before she married your father, Alina was caught stealing designs from her mentor in Paris. It nearly ended her career. I turned to Alina. So, I wasn't the first? Please, she begged. It was a lifetime ago. But you did it again. To me, your stepdaughter. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. I needed to prove I still had value, she whispered. Your father's company was failing. My career was over. Your talent. It reminded me of everything I'd lost. Get out, I said quietly. Just get out. After she fled, Miles touched my shoulder. When you asked me to mentor you 15 years ago, I saw something of myself in you. Someone who'd been betrayed but refused to let it define them. Why didn't you tell me about her past? Because you needed to find your own way, and you did. He smiled. Though, I admit, I never expected to find her working for you. Later that evening, I found Caitlin in the break room. Did you know? I asked. About Mom's scandal in Paris? She nodded slowly. She told me last year, after everything fell apart. She said history had a way of repeating itself. What do you mean? She lost everything twice, once in Paris through her own actions, and now with Dad's company. Caitlin stirred her coffee. She's trying to break the cycle, Nora. That's why she's here. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. Alina told me everything, about Paris, about your designs. I should have believed you. I'm so sorry. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Outside my window, New York's lights twinkled like stars, reminding me of that night 15 years ago when I thought my dreams had died. But they hadn't died. They'd just taken a different path. She stays, I told Caitlin, but not for her, for us, for this company. Caitlin hugged me, whispering, "Thank you." As I headed home that night, I realized that sometimes the hardest patterns to cut are the ones that shape our own lives. The morning of our biggest presentation of the year started with chaos. Our model called in sick, the projector died, and someone spilled coffee all over our sample designs. I can model, Caitlin offered, already slipping into the blue evening gown. My signature piece. I know all the pieces by heart. The buyers will be here in 20 minutes, Anton warned, frantically wiping coffee stains from the presentation boards. That's when Alina stepped forward. Let me help with the dress. The seam needs adjusting for Caitlin's height. I watched as she worked, her fingers flying over the fabric with practiced precision. In 3 minutes, she'd altered the dress perfectly to Caitlin's frame. Just like old times, Caitlin smiled. Remember when you used to adjust my prom dresses, Mom? The moment felt too intimate, too normal. I turned away, focusing on the backup projector Anton had finally located. Nora, Alina called softly. There's something you should see in the blue gown's construction. What now? She pointed to a nearly invisible seam. This technique, it's exactly like the one your mother used to use. I recognized it as soon as I saw the pattern. I froze. How would you know my mother's techniques? Because she taught me, Alina said quietly. Before she got sick, when I was just starting out. She was my first mentor in New York. The room went silent. Even Anton stopped fiddling with the projector. You never told me, I whispered. Your father didn't know either. When I met him years later, I couldn't bring myself to mention it. But Sarah, your mother, she was brilliant. And you have her gift. The buzzer interrupted us. The buyers had arrived. We're not done with this conversation, I told her, then turned to Caitlin. Ready? The presentation went perfectly. Caitlin moved like a professional model, and the buyers were especially impressed with the blue gown. As they left, placing our largest order ever, I caught Alina wiping away tears. Mom? Caitlin touched her arm. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's just watching you two work together. Sarah would have loved this. Don't, I snapped. You don't get to talk about her. But she's right, a voice said from the doorway. Dad stood there, looking uncertain. Your mother would have loved seeing her girls working together. Dad, what are you doing here? He held up his phone. Caitlin told me about the presentation. I needed to see it for myself. The tension in the room could have been cut with scissors. Alina stepped back, almost hiding behind a rack of clothes. How long have you known? I asked him. About Mom being Alina's mentor? She told me last week, he admitted, after the Paris story came out. Nora, I've been such a fool. You chose her over me. I chose what I wanted to believe, he corrected. It was easier than admitting I'd married someone capable of what she did. Alina stepped forward. I destroyed something beautiful, not just Nora's career, but our family. Sarah would have been so disappointed in me. Sarah, Dad said softly, would have told us all to grow up and fix it. A laugh bubbled up in my throat. He was right. Mom had never tolerated drama. The blue gown, Alina said suddenly. The construction technique. I didn't just recognize it because Sarah taught me. I recognized it because I watched her design it for her final collection, the one she never got to finish. My hands trembled. What? The sketch you made? The one I stole? It was so similar to Sarah's design. That's why I took it. I thought, I thought it was a sign that through you, her work could finally be seen. But you took credit for it, I said bitterly. Yes, and I've regretted it every day since. She reached into her bag, pulling out a worn sketchbook. This was hers. I've kept it all these years. It belongs to you now. I took the book with shaking hands. Inside, I found my mother's elegant sketches, her precise notes, her dreams on paper. And there it was, the original design that had inspired my blue gown. Oh my God, Caitlin breathed, looking over my shoulder. Nora, you channeled her without even knowing it. Dad moved closer, his eyes wet. You always said you couldn't remember much about her, but your hands remembered. Your talent remembered. I closed the sketchbook, overwhelmed. I need some air. But as I turned to leave, Alina caught my arm. Sarah once told me that fashion isn't just about clothes. It's about stories. Every stitch tells one. She gestured to the blue gown. You've been telling her story all along. And now, maybe it's time to write a new one. I looked at my sister in our mother's design, at my father's hopeful face, at Alina's tears, and at the sketchbook in my hands. Sometimes the hardest patterns to follow are the ones that lead us home. Maybe, I said finally. But first, I need to read this book. As I walked away, I heard Caitlin say, Mom, help me out of this dress. And for the first time, I let them have that moment without resentment poisoning it. I spent the entire weekend with Mom's sketchbook, tracing her handwriting with my fingers, studying her notes. By Monday morning, my apartment floor was covered in fabric swatches and preliminary sketches inspired by her unfinished work. You look like you haven't slept, Karen said, appearing at my office door with coffee. Anton called me, said you might need intervention. I'm fine, I insisted, but my hands shook as I reached for the cup. Sure you are. That's why you've got your dress form set up in your office at 7 a.m. Before I could respond, Alina knocked on the door frame. The production team needs... She stopped short at the sight of the half-draped dress form. Oh, that's Sarah's chevron technique. Come in, I heard myself say. Both of you. I pulled out Mom's sketchbook. This design here, she never finished it. But look at these notes in the margin. Alina leaned in, her finger tracing the faded pencil marks. Layer the silk like petals. Let it breathe. I remember her saying that. Tell me about her, I said suddenly. As a mentor, as a designer, please. Karen squeezed my hand and slipped out, leaving me alone with Alina. She was... Alina sank into a chair. She was everything I wanted to be. Talented, yes, but also kind. She never saw other designers as competition. She used to say there was enough beauty in the world for everyone's vision. Why didn't you tell me? All those years... At first, I couldn't face it. How could I admit I'd betrayed not just you, but her legacy? Alina's voice cracked. Then it became easier to pretend those years never happened. A commotion outside interrupted us. Caitlin burst in, waving her phone. Mom, Nora, you need to see this. She pulled up a fashion blog post. Rising star designer channels lost legend. Internet sleuths connect Nora Gibson's designs to late fashion icon Sarah Matthews. It's going viral, Caitlin explained. Someone at the buyer's presentation recognized Mom's technique in the blue gown and did some digging. My phone started buzzing with notifications. Fashion journalists wanting comments, old industry contacts reaching out. This could be huge for the brand, Anton said, appearing behind Caitlin. The lost designs of Sarah Matthews brought to life by her daughter? People love that story. No, I said firmly. I'm not exploiting her memory for publicity. What if... Alina spoke hesitantly. What if we did it right? Not for publicity, but for her. Finish what she started? I looked at the dress form, at the way the fabric draped exactly as Mom had described in her notes. You'd help? I remember how she worked, the little details she loved, between your talent and my memory of her techniques. A tribute collection, Caitlin breathed. Mom and daughter, bringing Grammy Sarah's vision to life. And Stepmother, I added quietly, surprising everyone, including myself. All of us, together. The next few hours were a blur of activity. We cleared the conference room, turning it into an impromptu studio. I brought in Mom's sketchbook. Alina contributed her technical expertise, and Caitlin documented everything for what she called the historical record. She always started with the fabric, Alina said, running her hands over a piece of silk. She'd spend hours just feeling how it moved. Like this, I draped the silk across the form, letting it fall naturally. Yes, that's exactly how she would do it. We worked through lunch, then dinner. Dad brought us food, watching from the corner with wet eyes as we created together. The neckline needs something, I muttered, staring at our first completed piece. Hand me that trim, Alina said. Sarah had a special way of. Her fingers worked quickly, creating a delicate detail that transformed the entire garment. It's perfect, Caitlin whispered. Looking at the dress, I felt Mom's presence so strongly it hurt, but for the first time, the pain was mixed with something else. Pride, connection, maybe even healing. There's something else you should know, Alina said as we were packing up for the night. She pulled out an old envelope from her bag. Sarah wrote this to me just before the end. I've never shown anyone. The letter was short, but one line stood out. Promise me you'll look after my Nora. She has the gift, Alina. She'll need guidance, support, love. I failed her, Alina whispered. Failed you both. But maybe now we can do it right, I finished. Dad appeared in the doorway. The car's here. Dinner at our place? All of us? I looked at the dress we'd created, at Mom's sketchbook, at Alina's hopeful face, and Caitlin's encouraging smile. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. As we left the office, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window. 3 generations of women, connected by thread and tragedy, and finally, forgiveness. Mom's voice seemed to whisper from the pages of her sketchbook. Let it breathe. So I did. The tribute collection launch was 3 days away, and our studio looked like a tornado had hit it. Dress forms wore half-finished garments. Threads and fabric scraps littered the floor, and empty coffee cups multiplied like rabbits. The press list is insane, Caitlin announced, scrolling through her tablet. Vogue, Elle, Women's Wear Daily, everyone wants to cover this. Including Monica from Vogue? I asked, my hands stilling on the beadwork I was adjusting. The room went quiet. Monica, Alina's old friend who had helped her steal my designs all those years ago. Yes, Caitlin said softly. She specifically requested an invitation. Alina looked up from her sewing machine. I can call her. Tell her not to come. No, I said, surprising myself. Let her see what real talent looks like. The door burst open and Karen rushed in, waving a magazine. Have you seen this? It was the latest issue of Fashion Weekly, featuring a full-page article about Mom. Old photos showed her at work, including one with a young Alina in her studio. Where did they get these? I asked. From me, Dad said, entering behind Karen. Found them in the attic last week. Thought people should know the whole story. I scanned the article, stopping at a quote from Dad. Sarah's legacy lives on through both our daughters. Nora inherited her creative vision, while Caitlin has her business sense. And Alina, she's finally becoming the mentor Sarah always believed she could be. Dad, Caitlin hugged him while I blinked back tears. There's more, he said, pulling out an old leather portfolio. I found this too. Inside was a collection of Mom's original fabric samples, including swatches for the designs we were recreating. Oh my God, Alina breathed, touching a piece of vintage silk. I remember when she sourced this. She spent months finding the perfect shade. We need to incorporate these, I decided. Not the whole pieces, but maybe as accents. We worked late into the night, carefully integrating Mom's fabric samples into our designs. Alina showed me techniques I'd never seen before, tricks Mom had taught her decades ago. She would have loved this, Alina said, watching me sew a delicate trim. Working together, creating together. Why did you really do it? I asked suddenly, the question that had burned inside me for 15 years. The whole truth this time, Alina's hands trembled as she set down her scissors. I was dying inside. Your father's company was struggling, my career was over, and there you were, young, talented, everything I used to be. When Monica offered to help me make a comeback, you took my designs. I took your future, she corrected, and I've spent every day since watching you build an even better one without me. A knock interrupted us. Miles stood in the doorway, holding a garment bag. I thought you might want this, he said, unzipping the bag to reveal a vintage dress. Sarah made this for her final show. It never made it to the runway. How did you get this? Alina gasped. I was her assistant before I was yours, he told me. She made me promise to keep it safe until the right moment. The dress was everything. Classic, yet innovative, exactly like Mom. And there, inside the hem, was her signature, a tiny embroidered heart. We need to open the show with this, Caitlin said. And Nora, you should wear it. No, I shook my head. It should be both of us. The finale, you in Mom's dress, me in the new piece we created together. And me backstage, where I belong. Alina added softly. Supporting, not stealing. Dad cleared his throat. Sarah always said fashion was about transformation. Looks like she was right. The next morning, as we prepared for the final fittings, Monica from Vogue walked in unannounced. I had to see for myself, she said, looking between me and Alina. When I heard you two were working together. Get out, I started, but Alina stepped forward. No, let her see. She gestured to our collection. This is what real legacy looks like, Monica. Not stolen designs and betrayed trust. This is what Sarah taught us, all of us. Monica studied the clothes, her face unreadable. These are extraordinary. The combination of vintage techniques with modern innovation. She turned to me. Your mother would be proud. You don't get to talk about my mother, I said quietly, but you can write about her, about how her vision lived on, not through theft and deception, but through love and forgiveness. After she left, Alina touched my arm. Thank you for not telling her about her role in everything. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for Mom. She believed in redemption. Do you? Alina asked softly. Looking at our collection, pieces of Mom's legacy woven together with our own creativity, our pain, our healing, I finally had my answer. I'm starting to, I said, picking up my needle. Now, let's finish what Mom started. The heart inside the hem of every piece in our collection wasn't just Mom's signature anymore. It was our promise to her and to each other. The backstage chaos before our tribute show felt electric. Models rushed between racks of clothes, makeup artists made final touches, and photographers snapped behind-the-scenes shots. Through it all, Alina moved with quiet efficiency, adjusting hems and checking details. 5 minutes, Anton called out. Nora, they need you for final lineup check. I found Caitlin already in Mom's vintage dress, looking like a vision from the past. How do I look? Like her, I said softly. Exactly like her. Places everyone. The stage manager's voice cut through the chaos. First look ready. Alina appeared with my finale piece, a modern interpretation of Mom's last design. Let me help you into this. As she fastened the delicate closures, her hands steady and sure, I caught our reflection in the mirror. For a moment, I saw what Mom must have seen all those years ago, the potential for beauty, for creation, for healing. I have something for you, Alina said, pulling a small box from her pocket. Inside was a silver thimble, worn with age. Sarah gave this to me on my first day as her student. I think she'd want you to have it now. Before I could respond, the lights dimmed. Showtime. The collection unfolded like a love letter to Mom. Each piece told a story. Her original designs seamlessly blending with our modern interpretations. The audience gasped at the perfect marriage of past and present, tradition and innovation. Then came the finale. Caitlin emerged first in Mom's vintage dress, a living tribute to where it all began. I followed in our new creation, showing where it was going. As we took our final turn on the runway, the audience rose in a standing ovation. In the front row, Dad wiped his eyes while Karen cheered loudly. Even Monica from Vogue looked moved. "Designers, take your bow," the stage manager called. I walked out, then turned back toward the wings. "Alina," I called, "come on." She shook her head, but Caitlin grabbed her hand, pulling her onto the runway with us. The three of us stood together, holding hands, as camera flashes exploded. Backstage after the show, amid congratulations and champagne, Miles approached with tears in his eyes. "Sarah would be so proud," he said, hugging me. "Not just of the collection, but of this." He gestured between me and Alina. "This is what she always wanted for both of you." "Nora," Anton called urgently. "Women's Wear Daily wants an immediate interview. They're calling it the show of the season." "Go," Alina said. "I'll make sure everything's properly packed up." "No," I said firmly. "We do this interview together, all of us." The reporter seemed surprised when we all sat down, me, Caitlin, and Alina. "This is quite a story," she said. "From stolen designs to family redemption. How did you move past the betrayal?" "By remembering what my mother taught us," I answered, touching the silver thimble now hanging from a chain around my neck. "That fashion isn't just about clothes. It's about transformation and forgiveness," Alina added softly, "about learning that it's never too late to make things right." Later that night, after the crowds had gone and the dresses were carefully stored, we gathered in my office. Dad brought champagne, Karen ordered pizza, and Anton played bartender. "A toast," Dad proposed, raising his glass. "To Sarah, who brought us all together, even if it took us 15 years to figure it out." "And to new beginnings," Caitlin added. I looked at Alina, who stood slightly apart from the group. "You know what this means, right?" She looked uncertain. "What?" "You're going to have to step up as head of pattern making. We've got orders coming in from every major retailer." "You want me to stay?" "Mom saw something in you all those years ago," I said. "It's time I honored that." She hugged me then, and for the first time, I didn't pull away. "Hey, look at this," Karen called from my computer. The first reviews were coming in. "A masterclass in reconciliation through fashion," she read. "The Matthews Gibson collaboration proves that some bonds can never be broken, only transformed." "They got it wrong, though," I said, making everyone look at me in surprise. "It's not the Matthews Gibson collaboration." I turned to Alina. "It's just family." Dad raised his glass again. "To family, the ones we're born to, the ones we choose, and the ones we forgive." As the night wound down, I found myself at my design table, sketching. Alina appeared beside me, adding technical notes in the margins, just as Mom used to do. "What are you thinking for the next collection?" she asked. I smiled, thinking of Mom's sketchbook, of vintage silks and modern innovations, of hearts hidden in hymns and silver thimbles passed down through generations. "I'm thinking it's time for something new," I said, "something that's all of us." Because that's what Mom had tried to teach us all along, that the strongest designs, like the strongest families, are built from threads of both past and present, woven together with love, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again.